If you are an Olympic archer, you will probably love and hate this sound. That's right, it's a signal for me to talk about clickers. I've done a few of these videos already, but people want some tips on how to use clickers and set the length correctly, and that happens to be something I had trouble with earlier this year. So if you have a coach, you may find this process of using a clicker a bit easier, as you will get a bit more input and observation from the coach as to whether or not you need to change clicker length. If you're self-taught or self-trained, this may be more difficult because you may feel like you're doing it right, but you're not maximizing or optimizing its usage. So I want to share a bit of an anecdote about what I struggled with early this year and a fairly drastic change I made recently to get back into form. So I'm going to set the clicker out quite far forward. This is what I used to shoot early in the year. It felt fairly comfortable, wasn't too hard, I could activate it and it seemed to work, but I had a lot of problems I couldn't solve. I'm going to fling some arrows at the 20-meter target down there and we'll see what happens. That's one of them. You activate a bit too quickly, so I'm going to just move it in just a bit. Alright, that's what I used to shoot, so let's do it this way. Okay, it's a shot. Nice, that's in the gold. Beautiful, consistent. Yep, in gold. Was that decent? Okay, that's all right, right in the gold there. So pretty good shots. And most people were pretty happy with that, right? But like when I look at myself shoot, I could never quite figure out what was going on. Like there wasn't something quite right. At this distance, at this target, I should be nailing X's or 10s every single time. And in this case, most of them were. But I always noticed a slight or a significant left to right deviation, especially as I got more and more tired. That's fairly normal. That's what happens when you start collapsing and cramping up. Yet it felt like it was a chronic problem, and it really chipped away my confidence, and it's one of the contributing factors as to why I stopped liking Olympic archery. So I couldn't shoot it very well. So there were a few things which kind of ran through my head, and another thing which I kept on noticing, especially when watching myself shoot in the practice videos, is what some people call the fake back tension. And that's when you have a very limp follow through, like you release, but your hand moves almost consciously after the shot, rather than being a genuine follow through. And thought, but man, I use a clicker. Surely the clicker would get me the right back tension. So what I did last week was actually, I started picking this bow up again for once. And what I did was, I shifted the clicker about an inch closer to the riser to a much longer draw. So I've added an extra inch. Now this normally is problematic because you might not have the flexibility or the strength to pull all the way through. It will wreck your sight setting because you do have extra poundage in the fingers. But I wanted to do this because I didn't feel like I was using enough back tension. And by forcing myself to pull a bit further, maybe I could activate this back muscles more efficiently. So with an extra inch on my draw, which for an established archer isn't an easy thing to switch up right away, since it is somewhat uncomfortable, I want to see what I can do again. So what I found, one, it was a lot more tiring, but two, it felt a lot better, like you're doing real archery and actually using your back muscles. Now I expect my shot to go a little higher because there's a bit more power in the shot, but I think we'll see a much different response on this side of the screen. Oh, it feels good. Hell yeah. Oh yeah. Beautiful. Nice. Oh, it feels good. I'm sure you know how I feel, right? Oh, yeah, that feels about right. I didn't record the grouping for the long clicker setting, but I can explain what happened here. So we had a few flyers. That's my first shot with the new clicker setting. Most of my shots were dead here. I got a few floaters on a 9. Yeah, it happens. But what I wanted to point out here in this on-the-spot demonstration was, when I was using the long clicker, my good shots were in the 10 ring. They were here, up here somewhere, over here, and down here. So they were in the 10 circle, which by the way is a big target face. This is the 120 centimeter face at only 20 meters. Like a good archer should get like 10s, like 5 out of 6 times. So I was getting 10s, but the grouping was no tighter than a 10 circle. The good shots in my short clicker setting were in the X ring. And that's something which really drove the message home. There were disparities between what I was doing and what my grouping was telling me. And changing this clicker distance perhaps has helped me attain this a lot easier. So what issues was I having with the clicker, and why did this extra short setting work better for me, at least as far as I was concerned? When I was shooting with the long clicker, I had some chronic problems, and I said before, one of them was the fake back tension. I think a few people watching me commented on my form and said, well, you're not really using your back muscles, and that was perhaps partially true. I didn't recognize it back then, but looking at my technique and how I feel now, and this was a spontaneous change, I thought, let's bring it in an inch, see what happens. That was a huge difference. I really felt I was pushing myself to stretch as much as possible. And clearly, I could pull that length. It wasn't like I was going too hard, I was physically unable to reach that draw length. I could, took a bit more effort, but it was well within my range of motion. Therefore, I was actually capable of shooting that draw length. So why would I be doing that? The shorter draw length, which I was accustomed to, perhaps came about as a result of laziness and decline in form, where I felt less flexible, less strong, and less conditioned, therefore was more prone to collapsing. So I think I set a short length kind of subconsciously and stuck to it because of bad habits. And along the way, there were numerous issues I had. One was that I kept on prematurely going through the clicker. That happens when you flick the arrow off, or you draw too far back and then you edge back forward, so the clicker goes off and you have to restart from the beginning, which tires you out more. And that was something I always had a problem with. Another problem was clicker panic, which is something which a lot of people go through. It's kind of like a sub-branch of target panic, but especially for clickers, it's when you start to anticipate the clicker and you kind of can't control the shot because you're waiting for it to go off, or it goes off and you freak out and you're not ready. So that was another problem I had, was I was controlled by the clicker. The third problem was an incurable left and right deviation, as I said before. Now at 20 meters, I was spreading across the 10 ring. That's not a bad thing, but at longer distances, let's say 50 meters and above, I was doing some really crazy, like off the target groupings. My level was generally quite good, so my height was generally at the right level, but my horizontal spread was almost to the next target, especially at 70 meters, I would routinely miss. And so at my skill level, should not be missing at 70 meters. I still miss at 60 and 50 meters. That shouldn't be happening. But I couldn't just figure out why. I was shooting the same way, but I could never control that left-to-right distribution well enough. There was always a chronic problem. I always thought myself, yeah, it's probably my release, probably my back tension. I'll fix it when I do more training, which I never did end up doing. But I didn't really associate that with the clicker, and that's something which a clicker does to people. What happens is with the short clicker, because you are naturally a bit more cramped up or collapsed, you're less likely to fully stretch out and expand. So you're kind of in here, you have a very small movement to activate, but it's like only 90% of your activation compared to 100%. So you're not getting full power. And because you're not driving the shot with your back, you're driving it with a conscious movement of your hand or your wrist or your arm. So you go through, click, and you let go. And while it may feel like a decent release, because the release is a separate skill to back tension, it may feel like a good release, but the arrow doesn't go straight because you've created this lateral movement with your hand on the release because you're not driving the shot with your back muscles. What I found when I switched to the longer draw, and this is again like an inch longer than what I used to, which is quite a big push, I was not thinking about the clicker because I knew I hadn't reached the edge of the clicker on the arrow point in the clicker at full draw. So I could easily expand and get more power in my shot, let my muscles squeeze together, let the expansion happen, and it wasn't a fear factor of running out of clicker because there was extra like a few millimeters or half an inch to go, and that gave me a much more clear peace of mind to know I could drive the shot all the way through. Doing that meant the shot felt more powerful and my shoulder blades were in line, and therefore when I powered the shot through, even though it pushed me, it really came out there. And because I was constantly pushing forward and expanding, that follow through was a more authentic follow through. It wasn't a floppy, whoop, I released, I got to play it backwards. It was really like I'm pushing, and it finishes. And every shot I did, and I did a competition on Saturday or Sunday, it felt great. It felt extremely exhausting, but it felt like it was a real shot. The results didn't show for it. I wasn't used to it, of course. I had got my sight settings, I figured things out correctly. But especially at distances I was more comfortable with, I wasn't freaking out and making erratic mistakes as I used to. And that kind of made me think about, well, yeah, maybe I was wrong all along. Maybe my initial setting was just simply incorrect, and nobody told me because I wasn't being coached. And I told myself that, yeah, this is my comfortable draw length, when in reality, I had that extra inch or even more to play with. So, point of this video is if you're struggling with your clicker, you may want to err on the longer side of your draw length to see if you can push yourself. It is meant to be somewhat exhausting. It is meant to push you and push your muscles, because that's how you drive a good shot. It's back muscle usage. If you're not using your back muscles, then you are going to find yourself having less consistent shots, and you'll be feeling fatigue in the wrong muscles, and it doesn't feel that satisfying. You know, people talk about good shots and what they feel like. A really good shot feels like you've engaged your back muscles and you've gone oomph, and that feels really good. So yeah, if you're struggling with clicker panic, then maybe add a bit more length to your clicker to see if you can draw just a bit further. Have that peace of mind and see if that extra draw and extra power can help you gain a more consistent alignment. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting and helpful. This is NUSensei. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.